Okay, so we're done with that. Now, no one can talk. So, continue, moving right along. So, and look at how Shaitan, subhanAllah al-Azim, how Shaitan always finds a way. This one guy comes on, sends 3 messages. Can I make a prayer request, prayer request, prayer request? And then when I finally don't answer him because I'm talking, I'm not going to interrupt what I'm saying because I am talking, right? The host of the Periscope. Because I ignore him, then he turns around and says, oh, so I can't get a prayer request, blah, blah, blah. So I finally block him because I know his behavior is about to get toxic. And then, Shaitan's helpers comes along and begins to exacerbate the situation to the point where I have to turn it off and turn off. Like, it's really sickening. This is Shaitan. Make no mistake about that. Shaitan, Rajim, make no mistake about that. At any rate, we solved that problem. So now they can't comment. So I'm guessing they'll find somebody else's Periscope to troll on. So happiness depends much more on your attitude than it does external circumstances. Your emotional state is based upon how you interpret events in your life rather than what actually happened. There's a quote that reads that the mind is its own place, and in itself it can make heaven of hell or hell of heaven. And in relationships, what we end up doing is we spend more time trying to control how others are supposed to make us happy. We spend more time trying to control how other people are going to make us happy, or supposed to make us happy, to the point where we lose control over our own ability to make us happy, or we are totally heedless or negligent of the fact that you are actually in control of making you happy. You are in control of that. But you spend so much time trying to force your spouse to do this to make you happy, to do that to make you happy, to do this to make you happy, that you forget that you are the one that is responsible for making you happy. That is your responsibility. That is your responsibility. That is no one else's responsibility but yours. But we invest more time and more energy in trying to make the other person happy, or trying to force the other person to do this or to do that to make us happy, that we forget that we have autonomy. We have autonomy over our own happiness. So this whole idea that you are supposed to make me happy, understand, happiness is a state of mind that you are in control of. I don't make you happy, nor am I responsible for making you happy. I can do the best that I can offer you, the best of what I can offer. Perhaps I can go halfway around the world and back, and maybe that doesn't make you happy. Does that mean that I am inadequate? Does that mean that I am insufficient? Think about all of the implications that go along with this belief that you are responsible for making me happy. We say, these men, they say, happy wife, happy life. Are you serious? Meaning, the happiness of your life is contingent on your ability to make your wife happy? What type of cuckoldery is that? I'm just curious. What in the cuckold is that? That happy life, happy wife, meaning my life, the happiness in my life is contingent upon how much I make my wife happy? And these are thoughts, beliefs that are fed to us in our lives. And meanwhile, you got this poor man on this treadmill, on this hamster's wheel, going round and round and round and round, trying to make this woman happy. You're going round and round and round on this treadmill trying to make this woman happy. Meanwhile, no matter what you do, she is never satisfied. How about that? And vice versa. You have some women on the treadmill. No matter what you do, you change your hairstyle, you change your dress, you change your name. You change your name. You converted to Islam for him. You change your name for him. You change your dress for him, right? You did all of that, and he still cheated on you anyway. He still cheated on you anyway. Because there's nothing that you can do to make him happy. The moment you realize that, the moment you stop investing so much of your time in trying to make other people happy and make them autonomous, empower them to become autonomous enough to take control of their own happiness. That's not my responsibility. It is not my responsibility to make you happy. Right, you change your religion. You thought that if you converted to Islam, he's going to marry you. You converted to Islam. You thought that you could change your look, stop wearing makeup, stop wearing bright colors, put on all black, put on an overgarment, overhead abaya. You don't even know who you are anymore. You look at yourself in the mirror, you don't even recognize who you are anymore. You went from being this bright, vibrant, free-spirited type of person to this individual, this creature who's now boggled down with all of these bags of expectation that this man has put on your shoulders. And you stumbling, you're trying to carry all of it. You can't carry all of it. He wants you to quit your job. You quit your job. He wants you to stay at home with the kids. You stayed at home with the kids. He wants you to change your dress. You change your dress. He wants you to change your hair. You change your hair. He wants you to do this. Stop listening to this person and listen to that person. You did all of that, and he still cheated on you anyway. He still cheated on you anyway. You went from one end of the earth and back as a man. You provided this woman with the biggest wedding ceremony. You went broke trying to provide this woman with the wedding ceremony that she wanted, right? You gave her the ring that she wanted, even though it put you in debt, even though it made you jump out the window and go borrow money from people that you didn't have, or take a loan for that matter, just to give her the ring that she wanted. You gave her the house, you gave her the ring, you gave her the wedding, the marriage, you gave her everything. You even sucked up to her mother. You allowed her mother and her father to disrespect you. You humbled yourself. You laid yourself down in front of them like a carpet and allowed them to walk over top of you, all to make this woman happy. And no matter what you do, she's still never satisfied. Never satisfied. You honored this woman at the highest levels of honor. And all to no avail. Why? Because you didn't realize that you are not responsible for somebody else's happiness. Abdullah bin Mubarak, rahimahullah ta'ala, a very great Islamic scholar, he said, Rida nas ghayatun lan tudrak. He said, pleasing people is a goal you can never attain. Understand that. He said, Rida nas ghayatun lan tudrak. Pleasing people is a goal you can never achieve. You can never achieve. He said, وَرِضَ اللَّهِ غَايَةٌ تُدْرَكْ. He said, and pleasing God is a goal that you can always achieve. Pleasing people is a goal that you can never achieve. While pleasing God, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a goal that you can always achieve. One of Allah's names is Ash-Shakur, the appreciative. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is appreciative even if you have the intention to do something good, but you never get around to doing it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anta ma'jur, you're still going to be rewarded. In the Islamic tradition, even if you have the intention to do something good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still reward you for it, even though you didn't do it. Allah is ash-shakur. He is appreciative of everything that we do. But human beings are not such. Some people, you can go around the world and back, and they will still never appreciate you. They will never be pleased with you. They will never be happy with you. You can change everything about yourself, and they will still never find happiness with you. You understand? Happiness is a state of being that you control. You have to make people personally responsible for their own happiness. I hope you guys understand this lesson. I hope that this unrealistic expectation, if we ever had it, that this has now provided you a different perspective, provided you with a different perspective so that you can look at this idea, this notion that whoever I go into a relationship with is supposed to make me happy. You change that mindset. No one is supposed to make you happy. Happiness is an individual responsibility that you are in control of, despite what is going on around you. The Prophet ﷺ, even in the city of Mecca, when Muslims were being tortured, Muslims were being captured, Muslims were being, forced to denounce their faith, all types of atrocities that were happening in Mecca. Some of the Sahaba said we never saw the Prophet ﷺ except that he had a smile on his face. He was able to smile under the most daunting circumstances. Why? Number one was to keep the optimism alive amongst his companions. Because if his companions saw him, moping, fretting, in fear, then what would that say about his message? That would say that he didn't believe in his own message. So he had to maintain, that level, that demeanor of confidence, that belief that this is just a window of time. This is just a small happenstance. This is just a small circumstance. We will get past this. Allah has promised me victory. All of the stories of the prophets and messengers were revealed in the Meccan period for a reason. To be an example for the Prophet ﷺ, to show him that every prophet and messenger that came before you went through the same thing. You are no different. You are no different. So the Prophet ﷺ, even in the times of peril in the Meccan period, the Prophet ﷺ still maintained this demeanor of smiling and this good nature, which gave his companions confidence. It showed that he had belief, confidence in his own risala, his own message. If he's walking around, moping around, oh, this person was captured today, this person was tortured today, and he's walking around in Mecca, the one who is preaching the message, and he's moping and fretting and in fear, and showing a lack of confidence, demonstrating a lack of confidence, what message would that be sending to his followers? Not to mention that he knew that success was coming. He knew it was coming. It's just a matter of time. All right, truth goes through 3 stages. I told you guys that before. Truth goes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Whenever you got to stand in your truth, eventually it will evolve. It will come full circle. It will come full circle. You just got to stand in that. You got to own it. Number 1, it's ridiculed. Number 2, it is violently opposed. And number 3, it is accepted as evident truth. Those are the 3 stages truth goes through. And you were to look at Prophet Muhammad Wasallam's entire lifeline as a messenger. It went through those 3 stages. First, he was ridiculed. He was called a liar, soothsayer, magician, crazy. He was called all of these different names. And then he was violently opposed. The battle of Badr, the battle of Uhud, the battle of Khandaq, the battle of Khaybar, all these different battles, the battle of Mut'ah. Right? Violently opposed. Until eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the ayah, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. You understand? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Al-Fath, the surah of the victory. So understand, that's what it goes through, but you got to be able to stand in that truth. You got to be able to stand in that truth, man. So it's all on how you interpret the event. So that's just one example of an unrealistic expectation. And I spent more time on that one than anyone else because I wanted to drive that point home, because I know so many of us have this belief that when I go into a relationship with someone, they are responsible for making me happy. All I have to do is just sit back and allow this person to service me, allow this person to make me happy. And whenever I am unhappy, whenever I am jolted by any bump in the road, I can simply say to the, nope, I'm not happy. Nope, I'm not happy. Nope, I'm not happy. You're not making me happy. And I can constantly keep the person on constantly keep the person on the wheel. Get off the wheel and make people responsible for their own happiness. That is not my job. My job is not to make you happy. My job is to make me happy and to offer my happiness to you in an institution that we call marriage. That is exactly what it is. My job is to make me happy because I know what makes me happy. And I am the only one that can never disappoint myself. So I work on making me happy. And then when I am happy, I offer my happy self to you as my spouse. You see how that works? So if each person in the marriage is working on themselves to make themselves happy and then offer each other themselves, then you make for a happy union. But if you sitting around with your arms folded, waiting for this person to make you happy, and they can say conveniently, from a place of privilege, well, I'm not happy. This marriage is not working for me. You're not making me happy. This situation is not making me happy. That's not how it works. In the real world, that's not how it works. Maybe that's what you were taught. Maybe in your environment and in your culture, that's what you were taught. But as Albert Ellis says, that it is your irrational beliefs are inconsistent with the world and the way that people function in it. Number two, from the unrealistic expectations that we have, is that your spouse is never going to hurt you or disappoint you. Your spouse is never going to hurt you or disappoint you. If you are married, especially to those of you who are newlyweds, that are newly married, if you think for one moment that that man or that woman that you just married, that you are so infatuated with at this very moment in your life, if you believe that that person is never going to hurt you or disappoint you, you are sadly mistaken. Your delusion that this person is never going to hurt me or disappoint me is disappointing. We are human beings. We are human beings that disobey God, the only one that we should fear, the only one that we should hope in his mercy. And we disobey him day in, day out. Day in, day out. And if a creature could disobey his own creator, how could you possibly believe that this same creature is not at some point going to hurt you or disappoint you? You have to own that. That is something that we don't want to think of. I never thought my spouse was going to do this. I was so hurt by this. Well, where's all of this exaggerated hurt coming from? Did you not think that this person at some point was going to do or say something that was going to disappoint you? It's the same thing with our children. Do you think that at some point this beautiful daughter of yours, these handsome sons of yours, do you think that they're not going to disappoint you? You don't think that they're at some point in their lives they're going to do something, say something that is going to disappoint you, that is going to hurt your feelings? Absolutely. You got to leave room for that. You got to leave room for that. That comes with the territory of being a human being. But we have these unrealistic expectations that you are never going to hurt me. I never thought my spouse would do something like that. Here again, the mother of all frustration is expectation. That's not to say that you shouldn't have expectations of people. You should. But your expectations, number one, should be rooted in reality. And number two, you should always leave room with each and every expectation that you have that there is an exception to that expectation. There is an exception to that expectation that this person at some point is going to hurt you and disappoint you. We're human. A woman catches her husband communicating with women online. I'm not talking about a situation that has gone further than that. I'm talking about just, communicating with women online, sometimes in an inappropriate fashion. And she says to her husband, I can't believe that you would do something like that. I can't believe that you would do something like that. Here again, your unrealistic expectations. Your unrealistic expectations. We have to always leave room that people are going to disappoint us. People are people. All right? Human beings are, not necessarily wired for perfection. That's not the way that we were created. That's not the way that we are wired. So you have some people who, are going to be disappointed. 1 second. All right, so your spouse is never going to hurt you or disappoint you. Your spouse is going to hurt you and is going to disappoint you. Leave room for that. And here again, it's about how you interpret that. If you believe that you married someone and you were loyal to that person and you did this for that person and that for that person, and in return, this person should never hurt you and is never going to hurt you, you are sadly mistaken. That is not the truth. You are sadly mistaken. Let me try to do this again. You are sadly mistaken. And this is why in our religion we have forgiveness. Why does forgiveness exist? It exists because of the expectation that human beings are going to make mistakes. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Kullu bani Adam khata'un wa khayra khata'in at-tawwabun. That all of the children of Adam are sinners, and the best of those who sin are those who repent. The best of those who sin are those who repent. So we're going to make mistakes. You have to leave room that your spouse is going to disappoint you. All right. Number three, from some of the unrealistic expectations that we have in our relationships, is that love should be reciprocated equally. That's a big one. What do I mean when I say that? Love should be reciprocated equally. Some people believe in relationships. Some people believe that if I'm going hard to love you, then you should go just as hard to love me. If I'm going hard in my relationship with you to prove to you that I love you, then the same should be reciprocated to me. And you have to understand people love differently. People love differently, which is why we have love languages. So the way that you love is going to look different than the way that somebody else loves. The way that you love someone is going to look different than the way that the person loves you. Some people, unrealistically believe that if they love their spouse a certain way, the spouse is supposed to love them the same exact way. And then when they don't, it's like, you don't love me. I go hard for you. You don't go hard for me. I love you more than you love me. That might be true. You love me more than I love you. That might be true. But that's a heavy statement to make, man. That's a heavy statement to make because your interpretation of love or your language, how you express love, might be to, go hard for someone in terms of making sure the bills are paid, making sure everything is, comfortably, put in place for the person for both of you to benefit from. And that's your idea of love. The other person's, the other person's expression of love might be, to cuddle with you, touching, being nonverbal, communication and things like that. So when you say, I love harder than you, number one, that might be true. Your relationship with love might have been a lot different, might have been more healthy than the person that you are married to. Perhaps the person that you are married to had a very, very, tumultuous relationship with love growing up. Maybe the way that his or her parent expressed love to them was in a very unhealthy way. So they are now, as an adult, relearning what love actually means and how love is actually expressed in a healthy way. They're relearning that all over again. Meanwhile, you grew up, dual parent home or single parent home, and love between you and your parent and your siblings was shared in a healthy way, in a holistic way, right? Physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. You understand? And then you go out into the world with this healthy interpretation and interaction with love, and then you marry someone who's had a very rough upbringing. He was hit by his dad who told him that was love. I'm showing you love. He was screamed on by his mother. And she's saying, I'm only yelling at you because I love you. You understand? He had a very tumultuous relationship with love. We put you two in a marriage together. You, with your healthy interpretation and interaction with love, are showing love the way that you know how to express it. Your spouse, having a very rough upbringing, a very, horrible experience with love, is showing you love the best way he or she knows how, and it's not enough for you. You believe that love should be reciprocated equally, and it's not. Almost never. Love is almost never reciprocated equally. I mean, how do you measure that? How do you even measure whether or not the love that you are putting out is equally reciprocated to you? How do you even measure that? Because the last time I checked, love was an emotion. It's expressed in it has physical manifestations. But love at its core is an emotion, is a feeling. Love at its core is an emotion, it's a feeling. So what are you using to measure, as you say, the tangible measurements of love not being reciprocated equally because the person doesn't go as hard as you go? Maybe they go hard in other ways, and maybe they don't. But there's a reason for that. And it's not something that you should condemn your spouse for, not something that you should find fault with your spouse for, that I love harder than you do. Then you should say Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah. Because I don't think anyone who is in a healthy, happy, loving marriage refuses intentionally not to show love to their spouse. There are factors. There are challenges, hindrances, obstacles. I don't think any two people that are in a healthy, happy marriage and one makes an intentional decision not to express love to the other person. So if you are not feeling the love that you are putting out being given, reciprocated back to you, then you have to be realistic about that and ask yourself, what you are putting out, does your spouse even have the ability to reciprocate that? That's the question. Do they even have the ability to reciprocate? And if they do have the ability to reciprocate, how can you judge that? How can you determine that? Possibly you can. Maybe there was a time when your spouse did show you love, and now it just seems like the effort is not being put there. Then now the next question has to be asked, well, why? Is it something that you did? Is it something that you are doing that makes your spouse feel like, have you abused their vulnerability? Have you refused to accept what they offered as love and they feel rejected? So now they don't offer it at all except sparsely? There are questions that need to be asked. No one is just in a healthy, happy, loving relationship and refuses to show the person love. No one just does that. There's a why to that. And until you take the time out of your life and begin to dig deeper to find out why your spouse is not showing you the love that you feel that you are putting out, they're not reciprocating back to you the love that you feel you are putting out. Until you are ready to get to the bottom of that, then you should, hold your judgment of your spouse. No one is just sitting back lazily and not offering love in a relationship. And then, of course, then what is the measuring stick? What is the yard? Or what are you using to determine that this person is not reciprocating to you love? What are you using to determine that? And then what are you doing to contribute to that? Have you done something? All right, um, so number one was that each spouse is supposed to make the other one happy. Number two was your spouse is never going to hurt you or disappoint you. These are some of the unrealistic expectations that we have. Number three, love should be reciprocated equally. Love is not going to be all the time. It's not going to be. It perhaps you may find a spouse where the person is reciprocating love to you equally. Perhaps. And if you have that, then alhamdulillah, consider yourself blessed. If you have that, consider yourself blessed. But that's not going to always be the case. That is an unrealistic expectation that because I'm putting out love at this level, on this frequency, then I should be receiving love back on the same frequency. That is unrealistic for a number of reasons. We love differently. We love differently in different ways and on different levels of frequency. We love differently. And so you should never look at it because I love hard, then that means that I am, when you say I love harder than you do, okay, maybe you do. But there's a reason for that. It's not just that, your love is stronger for me than my love is for you. Like we love each other, but we may love each other not on the same level. We can't. It's an emotion. And based upon our experiences with love will determine how much we can offer of that. Based upon our understanding of love. Because some people have a misunderstanding of what love is. You think about a domestic abuser, his interpretation of love is to beat the woman that he's with. That's his interpretation of love. I only hit you because I love you. That is insane in our mind, in normal thinking. Well, not normal thinking, but in healthy thinking. We think, how could that possibly be love? But if the same thing was done to him, and his mom beat him, or his dad beat him, you know what I mean? You know, relentlessly, and then turn around and said to him, I only beat you because I love you. Obviously, that's his experience with love. That is his experience with love. Not to mention that a woman in an abused relationship has now interpreted the abuse she received from the man that she was with as love. So she goes into another relationship with a man and begins to manipulate him mentally, begins to cause problems intentionally, and that is her way of showing love. Because her interpretation of love has been redefined by the toxic relationship she was in with someone who had a toxic understanding of love. You guys follow me. You see how that works. It's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, without a doubt. I'll do one more before I conclude. Um, the last one is sex is always supposed to be fantastic. Another unrealistic expectation. That you believe that every single time you and your spouse are intimate, it is supposed to be out of this world. That is unrealistic, whether for the male or for the female. Sometimes women, you don't understand that men, we go through a refractory period, a refractory period. All right. I wrote about this in my book, The Revolution of Love. All right. Actually, the first chapter is called The Coolidge Effect. The Coolidge Effect is a study that was done on a man, as a study that was done on mice, as a matter of fact. The study was done on mice. That they put a male and a female in a cage together. The male and female mated multiple times, many times. And then the male actually got tired of mating with that female. I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is real. The Coolidge effect was, I'll explain to you why it was given that name, but I want you to understand the theory here that men go through a refractory period whereby they lose sexual intimacy, lose sexual interest in the one woman that they were involved in a relationship with over time. They lose interest sexually, not emotionally, not, physically, but sexually. They lose interest. So they put this male mouse, and female in the cage together. They mated multiple times. And then the male went over into a separate corner. The female was in heat, so the female went over to the male and began, nibbling at him because she wanted to continue mating. She wanted to continue being intimate. The male is hiding in the corner because he doesn't want to be intimate with her anymore. So they took another female mouse and put her in the cage. So now there's two in the cage. When they put the second one in the cage, the male mouse eventually, went over to the second one and began mating, consistently like he did with the first one. And then he went back to the first one. And so psychologists concluded from that men sometimes go through what is called a refractory period where they lose interest in the one woman that they are in a sexual relationship with over time. And then that refractory period can be removed when a novel female is put into the picture. Absolutely. That's the first chapter in my book, The Revolution of Love, the Coolidge Effect. And the Coolidge Effect was given that name. The theory was given that name after the president Calvin Coolidge. And he went on a trip with his wife to a farm. And they came across a rooster that was mating multiple times within the day. And so Calvin Coolidge, he stopped at the rooster mating with the other one. And he said, how many times a day do they mate? He said, they mate all day long. And he said, well, when Miss Coolidge comes by, make sure you tell her that, like in joking. So when she came by, the female, Miss Coolidge, she came by, she saw the rooster mating, and she said, how many times a day do they do that? And they said, they mate all day long. She said, well, Mr. Coolidge comes by, make sure you tell him that. So when Calvin Coolidge come by, he said, your wife told us to tell you that they sit here and they mate all day long. He said, well, does he mate with the same rooster all the time? He said, no, they mate with multiple ones all day long. He said, well, when Miss Coolidge come by, make sure you tell her that, right? So so with the theory itself was given the title, the Coolidge Effect, all right? And what I'm saying is that even for men, sex is not going to always be dynamic. It's not going to always be, the 4th of July, you know what I mean? With shooting off, popping off, fireworks every single time, you have sexual relations. For men, it's not going to always be that way. Unfortunately, I mean, we're not machines. We're not machines. And obviously, the older we get as men, the less energy we have as it relates, the less ability we have to, the more susceptible to impotency we become. So there are a lot of factors, you know what I mean, as well as the man's diet, what he eats, what he drinks, what he digests, that also affects his ability to perform sexually. Absolutely. Absolutely. He's not drinking a lot of water, not digesting a lot of greens. You know what I mean? All of these things have impact on his ability to be sexually intimate with his spouse. And God forbid you have more than one wife. So for brothers who like to go into polygyny, especially you older men that like younger women, what do you think is going to happen as an older man in your 50s marrying a younger woman in her late 20s, early mid 30s? What do you think is going to happen in that situation? 5 minutes is not going to work with a woman in her mid 30s. 5 minutes is not going to work. You're not going to just get on top of her, satisfy yourself, and keep it moving. It's not, that relationship is not going to last that long. I'm going to tell you that. So you have a lot of older men that want to marry these younger women that are vibrant, that are energetic, and that simply put love to have sexual relations. Enjoy the actual act of sexual intimacy. All right, so sex is not going to always be fantastic. And the same thing goes for women. There are some times when women simply don't want to be sexually intimate. They don't. Just because a woman cuddles up next to you, just because a woman toots her butt on you when she lays, that doesn't mean that she wants to be sexually intimate. That just means that that is another form of love. Cuddling, holding hands, and things like that. That is another form of love. That does not mean that she wants to be intimate with you. And we have to be able to distinguish those times. When you're married to someone long enough, you can distinguish the times in which they want to be intimate and the times that they just want to be, sexually intimate from the times that they want to be emotionally intimate. There are times when women simply do not want to be sexually intimate. It's not going to be every time you jump into bed, she wants to have sex. I mean, if are favored and blessed with a wife that feels like that, then alhamdulillah, consider yourself blessed. But that's not always the case. And sex is not going to always be fantastic. We have to pick and choose, especially when you have children. Children are involved. You got kids, little ones running around the house. It's not like when you and her were in the home together alone. Now you have to pick and choose the times in which you can do that. God forbid, the little one's room is next to your room. You got to be quiet, things like that. There's a lot of obstacles. But these are just some examples of unrealistic expectations. All right. And in the Islamic community, as I said before, some of our unrealistic expectations are rooted in misunderstandings, misinterpretations of sacred texts, whether the Quran or the Sunnah. So you have some men who believe that because I am the man of the house, anytime that I am ready to have sex, my wife needs to be prepared and ready. And she does not have a right to refuse. That's another issue in the Islamic community, that Muslim women do not have a right to refuse their husband. And sometimes women are just not up for it. They're not up for it. It doesn't mean that she's refusing you. She's just not into it at that moment. And then sometimes we have to look at some of the things that we've done to push women to that point. So you have a man who cheats on his wife, he gets caught, and then he turns around and he wants to be intimate, and now she doesn't have a right to refuse. You have a man who goes and marries a second wife without telling his first wife, right? Without telling his first wife. And then you didn't get a medical examination, you got no STD check, no nothing. And you were sexually intimate with this second wife without using any protection. And then you come home, your wife finds out about it, and then you want to be intimate with your wife and she doesn't have a right to refuse you? Or based upon what? Based upon the hadith that the woman who goes to sleep while her husband is angry, she is the one that's going to sleep. What about when she goes to sleep and she's angry with you? Come on, man. Let's not take the text out of context. When there is a reason that precipitated the refusal to have sex, that is now the question. When there is a situation, a legitimate situation of disobedience and invalidation of the marriage contract, when there is a legitimate invalidation, Does the woman have a right Islamically to refuse? That is the question. Not in a normal instance where you come home from a long day of work and you're ready to be intimate and your wife just flat out denies you. That's something different. We're not talking about those situations. We're talking about situations wherein you went off as a man and married a second wife without informing your first wife. You were sexually intimate with her. There was no medical examination. There was no STD check. There was nothing done. And you had unprotected sex with her. And then you come back home to your first wife and you expect her to be, open for business, for a lack of better words, right? And to just, just oblige you because you are ready to have sex. And she found out about it, like, how in the world? First of all, I'm distraught, number one. I am emotionally distraught. I am in no way, shape, form, or fashion prepared to be sexually intimate with anybody at this point. I am emotionally distraught. Number two, I am allowed Islamically. She, as a woman, is allowed Islamically to take her precautions so that you, who was reckless, do not pass on a disease to her, which she may, in fact, pass on to someone else, like your children. Because there are certain diseases that a woman can catch that she can pass on to her children. God forbid she's pregnant. I mean, it's a recklessness. Here again, these sloppy situations from these raggedy men. It's just really sad. And then we'll turn around and condemn her by using Islamic texts that are taken out of context to shame and condemn her. I don't know about you, but personally, if I got to quote an ayat or a hadith for a woman to be sexually intimate with me, I don't want it. Keep that. I'm good on that. If I have to quote an ayah or a hadith to make my wife have sex with me, then what type of animal does that make you? You can't just give it to her to say, listen, she doesn't want to be intimate with you at this moment. You got to force that. Here again, that toxic patriarchy, right? Masculinity is not toxic. That is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's how God wired us. At sometimes we need to be toxic. I don't hear any woman complaining about toxic masculinity when you are in a domestically abusive situation and your father or your brother or imam or some good brother in the community comes to your rescue. I don't see anyone using toxic masculinity because in that moment, it's necessary. It's a necessary, you know what I mean? What they call a necessary evil, if I have to use that term. It's a necessary evil. If he's abusing you, and don't you want a man, a toxic, masculine man at that moment to intervene from him putting his hands on you? I don't see anybody using toxic masculinity at that point. But when you're sitting from a place of privilege, you're sitting on your high horse, running with the whole idea of toxic masculinity, then you can say, oh, men are toxic. But they're not toxic when they're saving you from another man putting his hands on you. Then it's justifiable, right? So then if it's certain times in which toxic masculinity is justifiable, then don't you think that that would require for us to revamp this term and find another term to use rather than condemning men's masculinity altogether? Don't you think that makes a little bit more sense? Aren't you, as a single mother, raising your son to be protective over you and any other woman that he is responsible for? I would hope so. Or you're raising him to be effeminate and to, let any other masculine man walk over top of him. As a single mother, if you are out and about, wouldn't you want your 16, 17-year-old son, if a man was disrespectful to you, wouldn't you want your son to intervene? Right? When Sophia, the aunt of the Prophet ﷺ, when her son, Zubair ibn Awam, got into a fight, Sophia heard that her son Zubair got into a fight. And when Zubair came home, Sophia went out to go look for the boy that Zubair got into the fight with. And Sophia found the little boy, and she said to the little boy, she said, "How did you find my son? Did you find him like a lion, or did you find him like a kitten? How did you find my son?" And the little boy said, "I found your son like a lion." And she went home and she stroked him, because that is a single mother. That is what you're raising your boy to, to be, the protector that he's supposed to be. So I guess that's not toxic. That's the exception to the toxic masculinity rule. Then if there's exceptions to the rule, then maybe we need to change the title, change the term, so that it is more befitting to the people that it is applicable to, rather than all men across the board. You guys follow me? At any rate. But my point is that sex is not always going to be fantastic. There are variables, there are situations, circumstances, that may not allow sex to be fantastic all the time. But if you are ready to terminate your marriage simply because you don't find the sex to be fantastic all the time, then maybe you need to look at your unrealistic expectations. There are a lot of variables. Or you can just keep jumping from relationship to relationship looking for the ideal sex partner. And then even when you do find him or her, how long does that last? How long does that last? So these are just some of the unrealistic expectations I wanted to talk about today, inshallah ta'ala. So that concludes our session for today. So Wednesday, we will finish up with unrealistic expectations, and then we'll talk about trust. How many of you guys have trust issues? We're going to talk about the topic of trust, inshallah ta'ala, in the next session, bi'idhnillah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.